Another trans shooter in Canada. The headline alone should be shocking, but what struck me most was the reference to a female in a dress. What does that mean? It means the shooter was a trans woman. Using this language is to protect the trans community instead of alerting the entire community to the dangers they pose. Hello, my name is Scott Newgent, and I am actually a trans man, and I have been sounding the alarm about transgender shooters for over 4 years now.
The Denver shooter was trans, the Aberdeen shooter was trans, the Nashville shooter was trans, the Georgia shooter was trans, the Philadelphia shooter was trans, the Uvalde shooter was trans, the Colorado shooter was trans, and now the Minnesota shooter was trans.
I think it's time I explain why I've been speaking out so strongly and so frequently about this. When I began to medically transition over a decade ago, I was stunned to be prescribed testosterone at my very first appointment. Then came the realization, something you can only understand from within the community. After attending 4 trans meetings early in my process, I decided to remove myself. Initially dismissed my experiences as just a few bad groups that maybe I was involved in. However, as I reflected and observed what continues to unfold in my community, I'm no longer surprised by the violence that occurs at the hands of transgender people, nor by the likelihood it will continue until regulations are established to prevent serious mentally ill people from medically transitioning. In these meetings, I encountered people who seriously suffered from mental illness, unstable, with little grasp on reality and persistent delusions. It's all they ate. They attributed every problem in their life, whether it was how people treated them, where they lived, their success in life, their relationships, any hardship, to being trans. They believed that medically transition would magically solve all of these issues. It was so bad that on my way home from the very last meeting, I called my wife and said, "These people are nuts. Don't ever make me go back to one of these meetings. This is a true story." And I didn't. When you consider that no psychological testing is required to begin medical transition, that 81% of those who transition have some form of personality disorder, and 86% of trans women have a sexual fetish called autogynephilia, well, it should be no surprise that when faced with pushback, some react aggressively. This is a personality disorder 101. Voila, trans shooters. This warning isn't coming from a right-wing Christian with no understanding of the community. I am trans, and I'm telling you, unless the media begins to cover these stories honestly and thoroughly, things will only get worse. This headline should have read, "Another trans school shooter, the realities of trans shooters." Do I think that medical transition needs to be halted? You betcha, absolutely 100%. Until we get psychological tests in place, this is going to keep happening more and more and more. And shame on the media for not covering it as they should. Another trans shooter. Shocker.